Welcome to the Investor Coaching Show. Here's your host, Paul Winkler.
What about now? Can you hear me now?
Oh, there he
There he is.
All right.
Okay, so what I said was I said hello to you when I walked in.
Yeah, he did, and I said you were very cheerful.
And then I said,
nice.
well, that's because after you beat cancer twice, you're just very happy to get up in the morning.
Right. Yeah, and you said that, and I hesitated because, it was something that was said to me earlier today, and I was like, do I talk about it? No, I don't talk about it. Do I talk about it? Yeah. It was just somebody who was actually talking about how, talking about how cheerful I tend to be all the time and optimistic and trying to figure it out, why. And I'm just like, well, boy, that is, I'm not, when I get asked a question and I don't know the answer, Ira, I freeze up and I just go, and it's, that is, I love those kind of questions because it makes me think I will be dealing with that for the next month.
Well, I think about it this way. I have to be optimistic.
Right.
Because pessimists always get it wrong.
Well, that is true. And the other thing I brought up was that book that I like, What Happy People Know. Happy People Know is a book that was written a while back.
What Happy People Know, yes.
Yeah, What Happy People. And the guy goes and he actually has a person that he's working with, and the person brings him through all these exercises. The first exercise was this, and you bring it up, Ira, but it was the first exercise he brought him through was actually going to a kids' cancer center, and comes out and he goes, first thing I'm going to have you do is go to a kids' cancer ward. And he goes, I'm. What do you want to do? Well, you want to be happy, don't you? Well, I'm not that unhappy. He goes, and he goes to the kids' cancer ward. To his credit, he goes and does the assignment and comes back and he goes, "Whoa, wait a minute!" And then he brings them through a series of exercises. One of them, just talking about Maslow's hierarchy, and it says, you have a need to be loved, and he's going. No, I disagree with Maslow regarding that you need to be loved. He says you need to love because you give control over that person that can either give or withhold love if you need to be loved. And I thought, wow, that's really interesting. So you're the one that is giving. You're the one that is forthcoming and actually giving away love. You're going to get love. I mean, it's going to be fine. But the reality of it is, you're going to actually be a lot happier because now and it sounds a little weird, you're in control, but you are. Because if you have to be loved, then it is very, very disconcerting when somebody doesn't love you. And there are people that aren't going to love you. I mean, that's just the way it is. I had no intention whatsoever of going into this particular topic at the beginning of the show, but it happened to be something that was in an article that was related that I was reading this week. It was about the perfectionism trap in The Economist of all places. The Economist was writing about this. And this guy was he was a young lecturer. He was a psychologist, young lecturer several decades ago. He says, I'm doing these assignments and I'm telling people to read these books and do papers on them. And I've got this one kid and he's way better read than anybody else in the class. And he is answering all the questions in class. None of the other kids have actually read the assignment. He does. When it comes down to writing the paper, he couldn't finish the doggone paper, he says. And he's going through and he's, you need to hand in your paper. You're going to get late grades. I know you know this stuff. We've had engaging conversations in classroom. I know you know this stuff. And the guy goes, I can't bear to give it to you. And, it's funny because I see this with people all the time. Perfectionism is just eating people alive, especially younger people. I don't know. I guess maybe it's even older people as well. But perfectionism, trying to get everything right. And why is it that we feel this need, to have everything right? And it was just it's a long article. I'm not going to go through it all here. But it had a few good things that were worth talking about. He talked about, it's like a virus. And what happens is he says it's adapted to the very conditions that have begun to neutralize it. And he talks about his work as a psychoanalyst. He says, I frequently encounter people in the grip of some punishing ideal of professional, romantic, physical, or moral perfection. And he says, rarely a day passes when at least one patient lamenting and berating themselves that they've fallen short. Now, this is interesting because there's another thing that I'm going to talk about today that was fascinating regarding what people believe, and JR sent this, is a living wage. And different generations have a totally different ideal on what a good living wage is. Fascinating. You know, they have a really different perception of what it has, what it is to have made it. You know, what it takes to have made it, quote unquote. And it'd be a good conversation, Ira, because I'm like, why? Why are the numbers so different? And I want to get into that in a little bit because it's a fascinating conversation. And he says, in here, he says, he was talking about religion in here. He says, the perfectionistic zeal followed by remorseless return made me think that perfectionism might be deep-rooted and a persistent element in the human condition. After all, he says, the Bible begins with a fall from grace and divinely created beings into sin and mortality. And he says, you know, another version of the story can be found across cultures. He says, from this perspective, religion is an extravagant scheme, for, as they say, for the recovery of our lost perfection. And, you know, he says, at least in its monotheistic variants. But here's the paragraph that I thought was interesting. And I think he's right on this. And if people could get it, it'd be big. But religion also has a contrary and perhaps complementary purpose. For centuries, it was the primary means through which we came to terms with being fallen or flawed, imperfect. In short, religious striving for moral and spiritual improvement goes in tandem with the somber recognition, and I don't know that it's so somber, but he says the somber recognition that perfection belongs to God alone. That's it. You're not going to get perfection. And trying to live up to some ideal. And so often what we do is we get older. You know, Erickson actually talked about how we get into generativity versus stagnation and, you know, midlife crisis. It's interesting, you know, midlife crisis. Did you go through a midlife crisis?
Well, I just got to midlife, so I don't know yet.
No, about 45.
No, I'm planning to live to 120.
No.
Nope.
Joshua, the book of Joshua says I have 120
Leviticus,
years.
you're not in midlife crisis yet, Leviticus?
Nope.
Okay, all right.
I don't think I had a midlife crisis.
All right, so it's interesting.
I mean, I got the red
This is
sports
debatable.
car.
This is debatable. You ready? I don't feel like I did either, because midlife crisis is what? It's looking back in my life and going,
Oh, my gosh.
did I do what I was supposed to do? Did I get where I was supposed to get?
And midlife crisis now.
All right, I had my
so
I had it at 30 then.
Wait a second. Do you hear Leviticus?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. What you say, man?
No, I'm sorry, Ira. I know this is Paul Winkler's show, and you're
No.
you're his guest.
You jump in any time, man. This
I
is
mean, people
makes
are
it fun.
starting to look younger and younger these days. So, and acting and active as
Right.
well too. So midlife crisis now these days, I want to say what, 50, 60?
No. Well, no, actually, they still call it, 35, 40, actually, 40, 45, somewhere in that
Well, that
neighborhood.
doesn't involve me. Nope.
No.
Yeah.
But what is it? It's supposed to be saying, I haven't reached my potential. Now, what were you saying, Ira?
No, well, actually, I want to comment on something that Leviticus said, like everybody looks younger. I mean, my wife and I were at a restaurant the other day, and I looked at her and I said, after the server walked away,
Okay.
I didn't know they let 12-year-olds serve tables.
You might want to check into that.
Yeah, well, it's they're all looking younger because
And
let's
she
face
sa-
it, we
and
look
she
in the
said-
mirror, it doesn't.
And she said to me, well, we keep getting older. I'm like, no, speak for yourself.
No. Yes, exactly. Perish the thought. No, seriously. So going back to that, the thing that this one psychologist was saying that I thought was fascinating. He says, okay, so it's the idea you haven't reached your potential, and that's when you go through midlife crisis. And he actually put a different spin on it. He said that midlife crisis, when you're going through that phase where you're going, it's actually good because it pulls you out of stagnation. It actually puts you into drive into doing something else and changing gears rather than stagnating. So midlife crisis wasn't bad in this particular guy's view. And I thought, what a fascinating, because I look at it and go, I didn't really feel like I went through it by any stretch because I felt like, I've But maybe some people with eternal optimism don't go through it. I don't know. But anyway, it says the weight of society's expectations is hardly a new phenomenon because it has become particularly draining over recent decades, perhaps because of expectations are so multifarious and contradictory. Perfectionism of the 1950s was rooted in the norms of mass culture and captured in famous advertising images. And I would submit that it's advertising and TV programs of the time, telling us this is what life is supposed to look like. And if your life doesn't look like you're going, and you can start to feel really, really like you're falling short when you watch perfect things on TV or perfect things in, now it's social media.
No, well, I felt like I was falling short watching Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous.
You watched that?
I did, yeah.
Wow. See, I can't bring myself to do it.
Well, I just think it's like really cool seeing these yachts and big houses and all that other stuff.
That's interesting because it's my rule of thumb when I was coming up and I would tell people, it's not a bad idea to do this. If you want to control your budget and control your spending, don't hang out with people that make more than you.
No, but when you're watching a show like Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, you can't do that. I mean, there was no way.
Do you really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You see, that's one of the things that I know that
I'm saying. Do we get depressed, though, because we think maybe we could and maybe we should have?
No.
Okay.
No, at least didn't for me, because, when I think of the universe of knowledge and the three different parts, you know what you know what you don't know, but you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Okay? Mm-hmm. So I knew that I knew that I was never going to be able to afford a 747.
Right.
I knew that I was not going to be able to afford a 140-foot yacht.
Okay.
So
why would you feel bad watching that show?
I didn't feel bad watching the show. What I'm saying is I watched those shows. It didn't throw me into midlife crisis thinking...
Well, because those aren't people that you actually knew. I'm talking about hanging out with people that you actually know that are making a whole lot more than you.
Well, I was having that conversation with my wife yesterday.
Okay.
One of my cousins, my uncle, was the president of Evan Picone, a very famous woman's line of clothing.
Okay.
And I don't know, I remember as a kid going to their house in Great Neck, which Great Neck in Long Island would be the equivalent of Belmead here in Nashville.
Okay. All right.
Okay, very wealthy area.
Okay.
And I remember their house, it was huge, and every bedroom had its own bathroom.
Okay.
And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I mean, I lived in a house, we had 1.5 bathrooms and 4 bedrooms.
Yeah. What you grow up in and you go, wow, I can't believe it. Everybody's going, and what the difference is today versus 30 years ago.
Yeah, and we didn't go to my aunt and uncle's house a lot. We weren't really, really very close. But then I ran into my cousin at the University of Miami.
Okay.
And we started hanging out. Now, I didn't get the allowance he got. I didn't have a car. He had a fancy car.
Yeah.
And so that was oh my gosh.
See what I mean?
I want the lifestyle he has.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, one of our friends...
Especially when you're a kid. I can hang out...
Yeah, I was 18 years old.
Well,
and one of our friends at the University of Miami was a guy by the name of Carl Lender, who was the son...
The Bagels.
Of Lender's Bagels.
Get out of here. Okay. When you said that, that's immediately where my mind went. Yeah.
And he had a boat.
Okay.
I mean, 18 years old. He had his own boat. When he was getting ready to graduate, he was engaged. Well, but the way he got engaged was he took his girlfriend out on the boat, and he had this big poster made hanging over one of the bridges in Miami that said, "Will you marry me?" And he drove her past that bridge.
Get out.
No. Serious.
That's interesting.
Okay. So, I mean, that was very hard on me being at a school, growing up. My father was an electrician.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we had what we needed.
Right. Sure.
But I didn't have everything I wanted.
Well, and it's that. So what happens, I think what really traps people financially, and I always said it, when I was a young financial planner, we're going back 30 years, but I had clients that were way wealthier than me, and it was this weird thing. I just didn't I remember going and meeting a doctor one time. I'll never forget it. And he would talk about, you ought to come on over to the house. And, and I was like, I don't want to. I like you, but I don't want to because I know what'll happen. It'll feel inadequate. Okay, I'm laying it out there. I mean, that's really what went through my mind back then. And it's, because I never wanted to do that for that reason. So, that's what we do, though. If you think about it, we don't even have to go over their house now. We just get on their Facebook account and we look at what they're doing, and then all of a sudden we feel inadequate. And I just see that all the time now. And he says in here, perfectionism isn't solely a malign force, however. The demand for perfection may be stifling, but a perfectionist can feel that his achievements are the only thing holding him together. And I've seen this. I've seen this with people. I've seen this with people that they don't connect. They never connected with their parents. They never felt okay with their parents. And, when they had a bad day, what they would do is they just kind of hide out. And I remember asking one lady one time, I said, so what did you do when things were going bad when you were a kid? She said, I just hid in my perfectionism. I just tried to be perfect because then somebody would accept me and they would want to hang out with me.
But I'm sitting here wondering if perfectionism is not really a source from pride.
Exactly.
Well,
because
but not necessarily, Ira. Not necessarily, because Leviticus. I don't. For some people, maybe. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's just I'm better than you. That would be a subclass or a subset of those people. A lot of them, I'm telling you, they're trying to get approval from somebody else, and they're trying to get somebody to go, you're worthy.
Mm-hmm. But wouldn't that appeal to someone's pride?
Not necessarily. No, it's just being accepted by anybody. Yeah.
I grew up differently, and I see both sides of what both of you guys are talking about.
Well, there are both sides. Yes, there are both sides.
I was trying to find perfection through my dad, and God rest his soul, he passed last year, day after Christmas. Right. But all the way up, all the way up to now that I was grown as a grown man, and when he was alive, I was constantly looking for his approval and perfection through me, and it wasn't pride.
Right.
Now he did instill in me and also my other siblings pride as well too. Hey, carry yourself like this, talk like this, do this, But it was a little bit more harsher on me. Sure. So I never came off to people, and Paul can speak to this as well too, because I talk to Paul outside of work. You know, I never come off as I'm better than. I did see that, growing up, and also I'm telling too much of my business, and I know one of my siblings are listening.
But what you are saying, is right. It's sometimes what it is. It's and to bring this into the finance world, what we're basically saying is sometimes we do live our lives trying to show the world, whether it be our classmates in our 40th class reunion, which, just happened for me. I wasn't there because I couldn't make it.
You're so busy, huh?
I seriously, I was too busy. I couldn't do it. I had too much stuff going on. But, people go back to those class reunions and they're just trying to show, hey, look, I made it. I'm worthy. You shunned me in high school, but, maybe you shouldn't have.
But for me, I would never go back.
I mean, that's
for me. I would never go back. So that's until I met you, and you are my financial advisor and planner as well too. Ooh,
well,
I'm a bum on that. Nobody knew that, huh?
But
but I would never go back to my high school reunion or anything like that because I don't care.
Well, but you may not care, but not for them. But I'm just talking in general. It may be parents that somebody's trying to please, is really what it gets down to. So that's it. It's that ghost. Sometimes we call it a ghost. It's just a person that isn't around anymore even. And we're still living to that ghost's image of what is actually acceptable and what makes us worthy.
Got you.
But it's just fascinating. Third other comes from other oriented perfectionism, and we're trying to live up to somebody else's ideal. But that is just so interesting to me, where perfectionism can be such a trap, and yet so many people live in that trap. And what it does is it drives us actually to live above our means so often because of it. And that is why so many people are in financial difficulty, because they're trying to live up to some ideal that they simply can't afford, nor should they try to. But understanding where the problem is and where it's coming from is the first step to solving it and to fixing it. So, you wonder, what on earth are you talking about this kind of stuff on a financial show? Because this is the foundation, really, of why a lot of people don't save enough. It's because of these types of things. And that's really what it gets down to.